Hi guys and welcome back to the Mighty Blues. My name is of course Cameron and welcome back today to another live stream. It is the live game preview, Everton taking on Nottingham Forest on Sunday afternoon. 2 o'clock kickoff away from home of course at the City Ground. I will be travelling up there myself early Sunday morning. Another really difficult game of football for Sean Dyche. Another really difficult game of football for Everton. One that Sean Dyche has labelled as a must-win. Not specifically this game in itself, but Sean Dyche had his pre-game press conference earlier today. He gave us a little bit of an update on Dominic Calvert-Lewin. He was asked whether or not Dominic Calvert-Lewin would be ready for this game. He said, we will see. He was asked the same question about James Garner. He said James Garner, got some really important minutes for the under-23s last night, and he was asked whether or not he'll be available in the matchday squad. Again, he replied, we will see. But he also was asked about, the upcoming games and the games, of course, that Everton have just lost against Aston Villa and Arsenal, and he said that he goes into every game of football believing that it is a must-win. He said that we had the same mentality going into the Arsenal game on Wednesday. He said that I don't believe in going into a game of football with the sort of thought process of we'll see what can happen here, or if we can get a point, that'll be a good result. He said he goes into every game of football with a setup and with ultimately a game plan to win that game of football. And obviously there's different game plans for different games, but every single one is with the objective of winning. He said that's something that he's always had throughout his playing career, throughout his coaching career, and obviously throughout his managerial career as well. And this one very much does feel like a significant game of football. Again, it's quite cliche for me to come on here in every game preview and say this is a must win, or that's a must win, or this is a must win, etc. Because I feel like that's a phrase that I've used far too often over the course of this season and far too often over the course of the last 12 months. And there's very good reason for that. I'm not just saying it to repeat myself and because I'm lazy and I can't think of any other adjective to describe these games of football. They genuinely are all must-win games at the moment, and this one is very much within that category. I'm just sort of getting sick of the fact that we're in this position where, every single game is a must-win. Every single game is vital, to pick up points in. And I know you could argue, well, that's the case in football no matter where you are in the table. You could argue that Arsenal, who are currently at the top of the Premier League table, every game for them is a must-win. But of course, it's a must-win for very different reasons. And if Everton are to lose this game, it would be absolutely catastrophic in regards to, obviously the Premier League table and our fight to stay in this division for next season. So this is a really big game, a game for me that Sean Dyche has to get right tactically, a game for me that the players have to turn up in and want to get something out of and want to, apply the right amount of, I suppose, effort and desire and determination to get something out of this game. And it won't be easy. Nottingham Forest, of course, newly promoted to the Premier League. We obviously all remember how the game at Goodison went earlier on in the season. Everton only managing to pick up a point, and that point was picked up, of course, very late on with the Demarai Gray goal. They currently sit 13th in the Premier League. However, they are only 4 points above Everton. So if Everton to win this game, we go a point behind Nottingham Forest. Of course, Everton sitting in 18th. They've played 24 games this season, won 6, which is one more than Everton, drawn 7 and lost 11. Their home form is significantly better than their away form. If you have a look at their most recent fixtures, obviously they lost last time out quite heavily to West Ham United, the West Ham United team who, similarly to Everton, aren't in a particularly good position at the moment and aren't necessarily scoring a lot of goals either. So maybe that's a sort of maybe that's something to look at for Sean Dyche and his team ahead of this game. Is, West Ham United obviously played Nottingham Forest. Now, obviously bearing in mind that was an away fixture for Nottingham Forest, so it'll be very different, to this one, of course, which is at home. But West Ham were a team that was struggling to score goals. West Ham were a team that was struggling to get any real sort of consistency in front of goal in terms of creating chances and scoring them. And they managed to put 4 goals past this Nottingham Forest side. The last time Nottingham Forest actually played at home was a 1-1 draw to Manchester City, which is of course very impressive. They'd lost to Fulham away from home prior to that. They'd beaten Leeds at home prior to that. They had a couple of EFL games against Manchester United in between. The last time they won at home, of course, was before the Leeds game, was against Leicester City in January. So generally quite a good home record. I mean, just looking at some of their home fixtures there in the Premier League, a win against Leicester, a win against Leeds, a draw with Manchester City. It's actually been some time since since Nottingham Forest, have lost at home in the Premier League. In fact, I'm just trying to get it up there. They've beaten Liverpool this season at home. They've beaten Crystal Palace at home this season. They've beaten Southampton away. They've drawn with Chelsea at home. So yeah, it's been quite a while since Nottingham Forest have lost at home. You'd have to go back to September against Fulham in the Premier League, of course, not excluding those games against Manchester United. So this is a team with of course a very, very, very good home record, and a home record that it doesn't bode well, particularly for Everton going into this game, especially given how bad Everton's away record is. Just the one win away from home this season, only 2 wins away from home in the entirety of last season. We are truly, truly horrendous away from home, and it's a problem that Everton have had for a long, long, long time. Of course, last season it was heavily picked up on because of the fact that we barely survived relegation, and we did only pick up 2 wins away from home. But generally across my life, other than that season under Carlo Ancelotti, which is very much an anomaly, other than that season, Everton generally have been really, really, really poor away from home during the course of my lifetime. Even in the days under David Moyes, we were solid and we'd win games that you maybe would expect us to win, but we didn't have a particularly great away record. We were always boosted by the fact that we were really, really good at home, and we would very rarely lose these types of games at Goodison, but away from home we weren't particularly great. As I said, Nottingham Forest's strongest point at the moment probably is their home form. We all know this is a Nottingham Forest team that have signed 126 players in the course of the last 12 months or so, and have actively pretty much got a completely new side, a completely different side to the one that of course was promoted from the Championship last season. Steve Cooper has done a really, really good job over the course of the last couple of months to sort of stabilise Nottingham Forest. He was under a lot of pressure at the start of the season. I remember that game against Leicester City that was touted as sort of a relegation game where whoever was to lose was, whichever manager was to lose would lose their job. Obviously neither manager did lose the job, and since then Steve Cooper's, stabilised Nottingham Forest a little bit, as I said, gotten them really solid at home and really dependable at home, and, picking them up points in games that, will ultimately see them positively, move away from that relegation zone. We all know the level of player Nottingham Forest have got in there, the likes of Brennan Johnson, who was definitely somebody on Everton's radar over the course of the last 12 months. Jesse Lingard, we know of. Morgan Gibbs-White, of course, again, another player heavily on Everton's radar during the summer. They did sign Keylor Navas, who is, an incredibly experienced goalkeeper in January, to come in because of the injury to Dean Henderson. They've obviously signed John Joe Shelby in January as well. Players like Czech Kouyaté, Emmanuel Dennis, Andre Ayew, who's gone there, which I didn't know about. So that's a complete surprise to me. Is me still thinking Everton could sign Andre Ayew, but obviously, they've got a whole load of new players and players that obviously are trying to fit into the club and trying to find their way, and that was probably why they had a little bit of a a not so great start of the season, is because of that, because of the fact that there was just, 23 players did they sign in the summer, 22 players, something like that, and then they've only further added to that in January. So the complete opposite to Everton, really. Nottingham Forest have gone out and heavily added to their squad and heavily invested in this team and the thought of this team remaining in the Premier League, and Everton Football Club and Everton's ownership and Everton's board have not invested a single penny, despite the fact that our Premier League status is very, very much in jeopardy at this point. So it will be incredibly difficult. As I said, Sean Dyche has got a task on his hands now. I feel like this is a game that we simply cannot lose. Now, look, I don't like going into any game of football and saying, oh, well, I'd take a point, because ultimately, we need to start winning games of football, and we need to start winning games away from home as well, because, at the end of the day, you cannot expect to remain a Premier League side with only 2 away wins all season, and we got away with it last season. and we mightn't get away with it again this season, and we haven't even got 2 away wins. We've only obviously got the one against Southampton, so we need to start winning games away from Goodison Park as well, especially if we're going to slip up at Goodison Park against teams like Southampton, against teams like Aston Villa, against teams like Brighton. I know Brighton are obviously a very good side, but I'm just talking generally. If we're going to slip up at Goodison against teams that you maybe would expect us to get something out of, then we can't afford to be going away from home with the thought process of, oh, well, we're absolutely shite away from home anyway, so it doesn't matter what the result is, it doesn't matter what, the outcome is. This game is hugely important, and one that, could, in the grand scheme of things, be a game that we look back on and ultimately, maybe could be the start of a decent run of form if we can pick up a win. We've obviously got Brentford at Goodison after this one, and then we've got a couple of really difficult fixtures on the bounce. Chelsea away from home, which again, similar to Arsenal, we don't have a particularly good record there, to say the least. We've then got Tottenham at home, Man United away, similarly to Arsenal, not a particularly good record. And then, we've got Fulham in April, who were doing well. Palace away, again, difficult game. And then you obviously start to go into the sort of remaining 6 games of the season, which I can't help but think will be incredibly difficult. So this one is massive. It's a massive game. It's a game that Everton must be targeting all 3 points in. And look, it will be difficult. I'm not going to sit here and lie. It will be difficult because Forest, as I said, are a good side, and they're a good side at home. Is it a game that we can win? I honestly don't know the answer to that question. I'd love to sit here and be uber positive and to be ultra positive and say, yeah, of course it's a game that we can win because of X, Y, and Z. But the reality is we, at the moment, don't look capable of winning any game of football, whether it be at home or whether it be away from home. At the moment, we just look completely and utterly shambolic, whether it be defensively or whether it be offensively. We haven't got anything. So, I don't really want to sit here and say, yeah, I'm absolutely 110% confident Everton are going to go out and win. I could be surprised. It'll be really interesting to see how the manager sets up. It'll be really interesting to see what the manager goes with. I predicted he would go with a 5 at the back against Arsenal. He didn't do that, of course. He remained with the 4. Obviously, he took Conor Cody out and replaced him with Michael Keane. But, is he likely to go with a 5 at the back in this game if he didn't do it against Arsenal at the Emirates? I'm not too sure. Are we likely to see Seamus Coleman, even though he played a 60 minutes against Arsenal? Again, maybe that's the reason he was taken off, is because we're going to see him in this game. There's a lot of obviously unanswered questions that we won't know the answer until about 1 o'clock on Sunday afternoon. But the question that we do certainly know the answer to, of is this game an important game of football? The answer is most certainly yes, and one that Everton just simply cannot afford to lose, because, as I said, after that Brentford game, we've got 3 or 4 games coming up that a lot of people would say Everton haven't really got much chance of getting anything in any of those games. Now, obviously, that doesn't guarantee anything in football. A lot of people would have said we've got no chance of getting anything out of the Emirates. Out of the Etihad and Manchester City away, and of course we got a point, but I don't really want to be going into those games against Chelsea and Man United and Tottenham thinking, well, we could get something out of these. Realistically, we want to be going into them games off the back of a couple of wins thinking, if we can get something brilliant, but at least we've got those couple of wins, back to back to sort of sit on. And, it won't be easy because, as I said, Nottingham Forest, you've got to go back till September for them to have lost a Premier League game at home. And they'll be looking at this game in a very similar light. They're by no means away from the relegation zone. As I said, only 4 points ahead of Everton. So if Everton are to win, they go just a point behind Nottingham Forest. And Nottingham Forest can quite easily be dragged into this race and quite easily be dragged into this relegation battle. And that is, of course, something that they will not want to do either. So it's not like Nottingham Forest are sitting mid-table with nothing to play for. It's a big game for them as well, and one that they'll very much be targeting to win, because obviously of Everton's bad run of form and because obviously of their league position as well. So, yeah, this one will be incredibly tough. Will we get anything out of it? I hope so. I'd like to think, I'd like to hope, I'd like to cross my fingers, but I can't sit here and say I'm overly confident because just of how bad we've been recently, how poor we've looked in front of goal, how poor we've looked defensively. there's just not really many positive signs at the moment. And again, I could sit here for 15 minutes and talk about how if Dwight McNeil gets a chance, he's got to have a go on goal, or if Neil Mopay gets a chance, he's got to take it, or this, that, and the other. But I say it every week, and every week these players get opportunities and they don't take it. So I feel like I'm just wasting my breath at this point. The reality is this is a game we can't afford to lose, and I think it would be. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say it would be a disaster if Everton are to lose this game. Anyway, let's get into some of the live comments before we do our predicted starting 11 ahead of this one. Kean says, "Hi Cam, what's happening, my mate?" And Anders says, "It's a must-win game. Wonder if it's another 6-pointer. Hope all is well, Cam. I'm not too bad, mate. Hope you're doing well yourself." I would say it is a 6-pointer because, there's a Nottingham Forest fan in the comments who says, he says, "Loser goes down. I think as a Forest fan, we'd take a point. You guys need a win. If Chris Wood starts for us, you'll get a draw 0-0. I didn't even know Chris Wood played for. There you go. Forest have got players that you don't even realise play for them until you talk to a Forest fan, or you watch the game and you go, when did he sign for them? They've just got. They've obviously signed a ridiculous amount of players over the course of the last 12 months. And as I said, fair play to them because, whether or not it works or whether or not it's a bit of a scattergun, a little bit of a chaotic approach to things, they've at least gone out and tried to bring in players with Premier League quality, tried to bring in experienced players and tried to do that in order to, improve the team and ultimately guarantee their place as a Premier League side next season. Everton have done the complete opposite. We've sold our better players and we've decided to not replace them at all, which is, another indication of how ridiculous this board is. We really need the 3 points from this next game, says David. We do. Massive game for us, says Joe. Absolutely. Mopay can't start, says Kean. Gray and Sims, says Joe. David says, "I hope the players have had plenty of shooting practice." Kean says, "Hopefully there's a storm with loads of wind, so maybe we can have a shot on target." David says they've managed to sign so many players, and Nuttall says, "Honestly, people will disagree, but Damari Gray needs to be in that starting 11 and Mopay needs to score a goal." Well, while we're on that topic, let's get into my predicted starting 11. This is, in fact, I'm going to do a preferred 11 this week because my predicted 11 would probably be one that would wind people up and probably be one that a lot of people won't agree with. So I'm going to do a preferred 11. I'm going to do what I want to see, and then I'll also do in the same bracket sort of what I think we will see. So let's get into it. In goal, Jordan Pickford. Again, probably a little bit harsh to criticise him for any of the goals we conceded against Arsenal. Maybe could have been a little bit better at his near post, maybe, but again, probably a little bit harsh to suggest that. I think the blame can be sort of put on other players. He's Everton's number one. He's been generally really, really good over the course of the last 2 years, 3 years, and he's not going to come out of this team, is he? So, goalkeeper Jordan Pickford. I would go with a 4 at the back because I think that's what the manager will go for. I would go personally with Ben Godfrey at left back. Now he won't. He will go with Vitaly Mykolenko at left back because he's a left back. And again, as I said, Sean Dyche very much strikes me as the type of manager that is very much, well, if you play in that position, then you will play in that position unless there's somebody better than you who also plays in that position. So I think he would go with Vitaly Mykolenko, but for me, Vitaly needs taken out of this team. He's been absolutely horrendous of late. The mistake against Arsenal was just another one to add to his collection of really, really poor mistakes over the course of the last 2-3 months that have ultimately led to Everton conceding goals. I just think Ben Godfrey adds a little bit more pace. I think Ben Godfrey adds a little bit more cover. Don't get me wrong, defensively Ben Godfrey isn't the full package at all, and he's not great going forward either. But put it this way, I don't think Vitaly Mykolenko is particularly amazing defensively. I don't think Ben Godfrey is. I know Vitaly Mykolenko is woeful going forward. I think Ben Godfrey's the same. But at least Ben Godfrey's got a bit of pace, a bit of strength, and a bit of power. And I don't think Vitaly Mykolenko's got that. So I'd go Ben Godfrey at left back. But let's be honest, it's probably going to be Mykolenko. Centre backs, I'd actually go with Yerry Mina and James Tarkowski. However, I think he will probably go with Tarkowski and Michael Keane again. I said this yesterday, and some people might disagree with me for this, and some people might be frustrated about me saying this, but I actually don't particularly think Michael Keane was that bad against Arsenal. I don't think he was particularly atrocious. I don't think he did anything massively wrong. I don't think he was awful. I don't think individually he made many errors that led to Everton conceding chances. But it's absurd in my brain to even think that there's a world in which a fit Michael Keane starts over a fit Yerry Mina. If the reason for Conor Cody being taken out is he's not playing well at the moment, and it's not an injury thing, or it's not a falling out. If the reason is he's just not in very good form, then you put your best centre half in there to replace him. And Everton's best centre half when fit is Yerry Mina. Now, yes, he's inconsistent, yes, he's unreliable, and yes, he might well start, pardon me, at the weekend, play for 5 minutes, and then you mightn't see him again for another, however long, because he ultimately might, pick up an injury and go out injured. That may well happen. Of course it might. But the reality is if he's fit and he's available, he should be playing because he's our best centre half. So I'd go with him next to Tarkowski. Right back, I probably would go with Seamus Coleman. I think there was a reason he was taken off after 60 minutes the other day, probably because the thought was that the manager wanted him to be fit and ready to start in this game. I actually think Everton looked worse when he come off the other day, but Seamus Coleman can't play 270 minutes in the course of a week. It just isn't. It's not a realistic expectation, is it? So, I think Seamus will play. I'd actually go with a 4-4-2, to be honest. I'd go with Takore and Onana in the middle, with two wide players of Dwight McNeil and Tamari Gray. Sorry, I would take out Ajisagay and I'd take out Alex Iwobi. I just don't think Alex Iwobi's doing much at the moment. I don't think he's playing particularly well. I don't think he's offering much at the moment. I don't think he was particularly good against Arsenal, so I don't see a reason for taking him out the team. I do think Tamari Gray does have to start getting into this team, because even though he's massively frustrating and massively inconsistent, and even though he hasn't particularly done much when he's come off the bench, I think he is our biggest threat for scoring a goal, or for creating an opportunity, or for finding himself a little bit of space on goal. Put it this way, if you were to line up every single Everton player one-on-one with a goalkeeper, I would put money on Damari Gray scoring. I don't think I'd put money on any of the other players, and that's it. And that's being honest. Obviously, Dominic Calvert-Lewin is exempt at the moment because we don't know whether or not he's going to be there. So I'd put Damari Gray on the right. I'd have Dwight McNeil on the left. I thought Dwight McNeil's done okay recently. Again, put a couple of good balls into the box when he's needed to. Worked hard, pulled himself about, battled. Don't see no issue with that. And I would just have the two in midfield. I think, I understand the necessity to have three in midfield, and I understand that a lot of times last season we played with the two in midfield and it just didn't simply work. But the reality is, at the moment, Ajisagay is he's doing more negative than he is doing positive. And similarly to Vitaly Mykhalenko, I think he just needs a period out of this team to refresh, to sit back and ultimately just to be taken out of the limelight, because he's been atrocious over the last 2 months. Garnagate, he's been absolutely atrocious. And then, that obviously leaves two strikers up front. I would go with the two strikers. I would go with Ellis Sims and Neil Maupay. Obviously, Sean Dyche was asked about Dominic Calvert-Lewin today, and he said, he was asked whether or not Dom will be available for the matchday squad. He said, we will see. That practically means no, and if it means yes, it more than likely means he would be on the bench and not he will be starting. So, if Dom's back, then that's a bonus, great, fine. But if he isn't, then it's not a massive surprise, is it? So there you go. That's my preferred starting 11, as well as the prediction. Predicted wise, I think Garner probably will start. I do think Gray will come in, and I think you'll probably still see one up front, which is baffling to me, because Neil Maupay is absolutely atrocious up front on his own. Sheamus Chicken Coop has what's City doing here? City's trying to have a go. Go away, City.
I didn't catch that.
I know.
Could you try again?
No, I won't try again, City. I don't want to talk to you, mate. Go away, thank you. He said he has donated €5 to the team. Thank you very much, my mate. He says, honestly, gut feeling at Everton going down if they lose this game. Not necessarily, no, because there's still a lot of football to play. But this is a massive game of football in the relegation battle, if you like it, and one that Everton can't afford to lose. But it doesn't mean we're guaranteed to go down if we do lose it. Anyway, there you go. We are going to leave it there. If you have enjoyed this one, please do leave a like. We will be back with the instant match reaction and the player ratings on Sunday, so don't forget to look out for those. Massive game, this one that Everton simply cannot afford to lose. And let's hope we can go out there and get something. If you're watching as a YouTube video, massive thank you to everybody for watching. If you're watching live, big thanks to everybody for getting involved. Leave a like if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you're new, up the toffees, and we'll see you later.